Life in the slow and dusty countryside holds few prospects for a young man seeking a wider horizon, leaving ambition to wither away in quiet isolation. Looking to secure a brighter path, a humble and modest country father named George approaches a wealthy and influential town figure known as Borges during a routine visit to a local barbershop to ask for a major favor that could alter his family name forever. With deep respect and quiet desperation, George asks if his adolescent son Ignatius might accompany the prosperous man back to the bustling city of Rio de Janeiro to work as an apprentice and learn the vital ways of a respectable trade. Borges agrees to the arrangement after a brief moment of thoughtful deliberation, pulling the young man away from the absolute stillness of rural life and dropping him straight into the endless, swirling currents of urban existence where grand fortunes and hidden perils walk hand in hand. As their carriage cuts through the lively, crowded streets, Borges issues a stern and serious warning to the youth, emphasizing that such a rare opportunity is never handed to just anyone, and advising him not to squander his chance at building a respectable future. Upon reaching his stately home, Borges presents Ignatius to his wife Severina, introducing the boy loosely as the relative of a distant village acquaintance, rather than an ordinary charity case needing financial assistance. Severina welcomes the newcomer with effortless grace, offering a warm smile and immediately setting aside a quiet, comfortable room for him to settle into his new surroundings. Once the guest space is fully prepared, she hands him a book as a thoughtful gesture to encourage quiet evening reflection and help him adjust to the intellectual rhythm of the household. The following morning arrives with strict discipline as Borges takes the boy under his wing, imparting heavy lessons regarding honor, professional integrity, and the sheer grit required to survive the demands of the working world before walking him through the initial administrative paperwork required for his employment. Nightfall brings a heavy, settling silence over the household after a routine dinner, leaving Ignatius alone inside his designated room with the volume Severina had provided him hours earlier. As he begins flipping through the pages, the boundary between reality and fantasy begins to blur under the weight of his soaring imagination, transforming the quiet atmosphere into a surreal space. In a vivid waking daydream, he pictures Severina gliding across the floor before him, her presence striking, magnetic, and defined explicitly by the graceful movement of her exposed arms that time itself seems to freeze just to watch her pass by. This mental image quickly refuses to stay confined to the late hours, following him directly into his waking hours and persistently bleeding into his daily tasks at the office until his work suffers from a severe lack of concentration. Borges is sharp enough to notice the sudden shift in his young apprentice, watching the boy's mounting distraction grow like a smoldering coal hidden beneath gray ash. The mounting tension finally snaps one evening during dinner when Borges loses his temper, his sudden outburst cutting through the polite dining room silence like a sharp crack of thunder and leaving everyone stunned. The explosive reaction leaves a deep emotional residue on Severina, prompting her to withdraw into the quiet sanctuary of her own quarters where she stands before a tall mirror, measuring her thoughts and trying to process the lingering shock of her husband's unwarranted fury. Because Ignatius served as the unfortunate catalyst for this domestic storm, a strange and unnamed curiosity begins to churn within her chest, pulling her steps almost instinctively toward the hallway upon noticing the youth's nearly adult traits. Driven by an invisible force, she drifts silently toward the boy's closed door where Ignatius sits in total darkness, completely lost inside the pages of the very book she had handed him on his first night. Morning light restores the traditional routine, forcing Borges and Ignatius back to the office desk, but the daydreams return uninvited to plague the young man's thoughts once more. While staring blankly across the room, Ignatius watches a female colleague move about her duties, her physical form slowly melting and reshaping itself in his mind until she completely transforms into Severina. When night finally arrives, the illusion deepens into an intense dream state where he feels Severina standing intimately close to him, bridging the gap between their isolated inner worlds as though physical distance meant nothing at all. At that exact second, Severina jolts awake in her own bed, gasping as if an unseen phantom had brushed against the sensitive edges of her soul and disrupted her slumber. The following morning brings a deliberate change of pace when Borges decides to leave Ignatius behind, instructing the young man to take the day off to recover from a routine that has clearly begun to fray his nerves. Left alone in the house, Ignatius retreats to his bedroom and opens the book once more, though the printed letters quickly dissolve and pull him under into a heavy, undisturbed sleep. Meanwhile, Severina finds herself utterly unable to shake a persistent wave of restlessness, her footsteps guided down the corridor by the same quiet magnetic pull that drew her near his door before. Inside his dream, Ignatius sees her form stepping closer still, while in the waking world, Severina mirrors the movement precisely, walking down the hall toward the sleeping boy with a heart heavy with unnameable emotion. Hovering in the delicate space between hesitation and pure instinct, she stands near him for a breathless moment, erasing the invisible barrier between conscious desire and dreamscape before turning around to retrace her steps. She retreats to her own room, sitting in prolonged solitude as she attempts to process the weight of her own actions and the profound shift that has quietly taken root in her life. Not long afterward, Borges returns home, pacing through the hallways with slow, measured steps as if hunting for an elusive shadow, before checking in on both his sleeping wife and his resting apprentice. Though everything appears calm on the surface, the atmosphere inside the rooms feels altered, prompting a sharp suspicion to harden within the master of the house regarding the young man's place beneath his roof. By dawn, a final and unyielding decision has crystallized in Borges' mind, convincing him that Ignatius must be sent away from his home to protect the sanctity of his domestic life, though he arranges for the boy to continue working under his supervision elsewhere. As the carriage waits outside to take Ignatius back toward his father, the young man pauses on the threshold, turning his head for one desperate glimpse at the windows in hopes of catching a final silhouette or a silent farewell from Severina. Borges quickly blocks his line of sight, curtly explaining that his wife is unwell and must not be disturbed by trivial departures, abruptly severing any hope of a proper goodbye. On the other side of the courtyard wall, Severina works in absolute silence to restore the guest bedroom to its original state, smoothing down the sheets and repositioning every small object to wipe away any physical trace of his stay. It is a wordless gesture signaling that the room is once again empty and unburdened by any lingering narrative, ready to receive whatever stranger might cross its threshold next. The film concludes with a slow, melancholic fade as the carriage carries Ignatius away from the house into an uncertain future, leaving him facing a permanent separation from the life he had briefly imagined.